stocks and some bars and stocks and some bars and stocks and some bars and stocks.
I got my clique ready to use the money they got from jobs, encouraging, teaching them that it's not so hard. I'm doing this, making investing pop. Law is X-tro, you tuning in to Stocks and Bars.
Now for part 2 of our conversation with Taylor Sohns, the financial advisor you must know. I can believe it because they've made it very convenient for you to use it. Like I have a desktop now, and the only reason why I have a desktop is because I got tired of looking at my little screen to figure things out. But then I said, wait a minute, I can just put it back on the computer. So I reverted and got a desktop set up so I can do work. So I'm totally old school now because I don't use my phone for all of the stuff that I used to. But
sure,
I want to actually go back to your time as being the advisor, right? So when you went around and you traveled around the country, I'm pretty sure that you noticed there were a couple of things in common between these families. So could you share with the people, what did you find that these people tended to have in common that had this mass amount of wealth?
Yeah, I think there's one underlying component that almost every one of them had, outside of some that maybe inherited their wealth. And, if you went back and saw where they inherited from, this person did that. It's taking targeted risk. Taking targeted risk, calculated risk was the one thing that I saw that everybody had mass affluence did, whether that be, hey, I'm going to start a business here, or I'm going to break away and start a new segment here and take some of my employees and move there. The ownership factor is what they all had. They, very few of them worked for a company, and you can be a CEO of a company and absolutely make, $50 million in a year, but that's really, really rare. What more people did than not in their scenario was step away, step back and say, hey, I know there's a need in this market, and I think I have the skill set to meet that need in a way that no one else is doing. And that was the one underlying core tenet to all of them. And always was a fact of they had to take on a pretty significant amount of risk. And the ones that did it successfully, the folks that I was speaking with, had this underlying fundamental baseline when they went on to take that risk. Because when you start your own company or do something different, break out on your own, you need to be financially secure, because things generally don't flourish immediately.
Right.
You generally have to live through a period of time where you're making little money, and actually, to start the business, you're putting out money. So most times businesses on the onset are capital intensive. And so you either have to come up with that money yourself or raise it from somewhere, but generally you're not taking a salary right out of the gate. So I guess the underlying tenet there is get yourself in a financial situation where you're able to do that if you ever do see a need. And I'm not one of these people on social media that says no one should work for a company. Like, that's great. I don't think that at all. I had a great life with a company. If I didn't want to do what I did now, I would have continued to work for them and been very happy and made a very good living. I just thought that this was an area of the financial market where there was an underserved population and someone looking out for them in their best interest, besides for trying to sell them crypto or Tesla or whatever. And I'm not saying anything against that, but nonetheless, like, that is not a sound financial portfolio. And I thought that that was an underserved area of the market that I could step to. But long-winded way of saying they took on calculated risk and they had themselves financially set up to afford them the ability to take on that calculated risk.
All right. So when you dealt with these people, how long do you think it took them to amass that type of wealth? Is it one generation, 2 generations? What did you see?
Generally, this was first generational stuff. So, but that doesn't mean that it didn't take them 25, 30 years to do so. Right. So these, and when I say $100 million, that was the extreme, right? Those were scenarios that I found myself in. But moreover, most of the conversations I was having were people that tend to call it $30 million. And don't get me wrong, that is still astronomical wealth, multiples of what the average household makes. But $100 million, you start hitting 3 digits, like that's a whole nother level. And so, but yeah, people that have $10 to $30 million, a lot of them amass that over a 30-year period of time of working on their own. And some of them sold to publicly traded companies. Some of their companies became publicly traded companies. So yeah, it was really impressive and really humbling to sit with these people, and especially because I came in as the expert, and I'm looking at these people like I obviously have nowhere near them that wealth, and they look at me as I'm the expert, as I'm the person telling them what to do. And it was a humbling experience, and something that it took some getting used to before I was comfortable doing so. And I said that was 10 years. That was only the latter 6 years of it. 4 years of it was kind of more of the grunt work and me making sure I understood everything, and getting a CFP and getting a SEMA and those things, and doing the education.
Okay. Yeah. So when you dealt with these families, this is a curious question I have here, because I'm a culture guy, and there's a lot of things I know about my culture and what I saw in growing up. So I'm interested. How many of these families were not white? We'll put it that way.
I hate to say it, very few. And it became so evident to me right out of the gates that this is a cultural gap. It is a racial gap. It is a wealth gap. And very few of them. Now, granted, I spent a lot of my time, for the record too, though. One of the areas that I covered most closely was Indiana and Kentucky. So granted, you have to take that with a grain of salt, whereas that isn't the most mixed racial population that there is. Whereas I did have friends that spent more time in Southern California, and there was a very big Asian contingent there with a lot of money, et cetera. But no, most of them unfortunately looked like me.
Yeah. Well,
that what it is. What it is. This is what it is. Like, I'm not a proponent of that. That's one of the reasons that why we're doing what we're doing is more accessible financial products that are put together with a sophisticated, educated background need to be brought to market, because otherwise what happens is people take the step into investing and they buy what they think is cool. And I don't mean they think it's cool because it's done so well recently, is generally what the case is. So most people, this is interesting. So JP Morgan put out a stat that talked about, it showed when people entered the crypto market, and the highest number of people entered the crypto market, made their first crypto purchase when Bitcoin was at $68,729.
Oh, no.
The absolute day of the peak of Bitcoin prices was when the most people entered the market for the first time. And it's natural because people got FOMO. Their friend told them when it was trading at 40,000 they bought, and all of a sudden they doubled and then some, or not doubled, but made 50, 60% gains on it. They said, hey, you got to get on board. This thing's going to the moon. People are talking about going to $1 million. And they're like, all right, I'm in. And then they get their legs chopped out from under them. It falls 60, 70%. And they're like, I'm never investing again. This is a fool's game.
That's what happens.
And it's hardwired into us is the problem. People are hardwired to be bad investors because it goes back to, I don't want to get into religion or anything like that, but like, if you believe at all in kind of Darwin and survival of the fittest, it's fight or flight.
Right.
You can't fight the market. So flight is the only option. And when things get scary, it's fight or flight. You go, I'm out. And so that's hardwired into our brains. And it's something that you have to teach yourself and coach yourself over time to get away from, because as Warren Buffett says, right, you want to buy when there's blood in the streets, but when there's blood in the streets, it is scary as all get out to buy. And you have to know what you're buying there too. Don't get me wrong, but yeah.
This is something that we're going to forever have to struggle. I don't think this is ever going to go away. And for the simple fact that, like you said, people are scared. And I remember when I first got into the market, it was like right before the '08 crash. And I got in because oil started to go up. And I remember vividly when I was pumping my gas at the gas station, and it was like $4 or something at that point. And I'm like, wait a minute, why am I not getting paid for this?
Right.
Why don't I just actually own this gas company that is actually charging me for this, right? And then that's when the light switch hit for me. And I'm like, all right, that's it, no more. And that's when I started changing the game for myself. So I want to actually go to Bitcoin now, because we talked about the whole dollar and the BRICS thing, and you mentioned about the centralized aspect of things.
Yep.
So how do you feel Bitcoin is going to continue to play into the future? You go first, I'll go after you.
Yep. So I'll shoot you straight. I'll call the spade that I think it is. I think Bitcoin is a risk on asset. So I think that people are going to buy it when the risk nature of the market is there. And so like this year is a really good example. The NASDAQ is up 17%, whatever it is year to date, something like that. And Bitcoin's up, I don't know, 60% or something like that.
Yes.
Last year, the NASDAQ was down 33% and Bitcoin was down 70. The year before that, 2021, Bitcoin was up 200 and something percent and the NASDAQ was up 40%. The year before, it trades very closely related to the NASDAQ. And so when we look back and say, hey, how has the NASDAQ, which are, and I should be giving this context, NASDAQ 100 is an index that's made up of predominantly tech stocks. So the NASDAQ in Bitcoin generally trade directionally together. And so if we look back at what the NASDAQ has done historically during recessions, in 2008, it was down 40%. In 2000, 2001, 2002, it was down, and I'm not going to get this perfect, but something like 21, 32, and 40% in 3 subsequent years. So now there is a narrative to it that it does all of these different things, but I like to look at the numbers and look at correlations and relationships. I'm a numbers nerd. And when I look at the numbers, the thing I draw the closest parallel to is every year the NASDAQ's up, it's been up. Every year the NASDAQ's down, it's been down. And we can't look at Bitcoin during a recession because it gained popularity in the early 2010s. So it wasn't around for 2008 in any meaningful way. And then it was around in 2020 and it gapped downwards just like the NASDAQ did during COVID, but then it snapped back right like the NASDAQ did immediately. So that's not really a great barometer because it was a government-induced recession that happened synthetically, I'll call it. And then it was, off to the races out of the other side. It was like a 45-minute recession. Like that wasn't real.
It was what in Marvel called the blip.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly right. So, hey, I don't mean to rain on anyone's parade. That's there I see the relationships, and that's where I think that the risk on trade, the music stops when you move into a recession and people start to look to take on less risk and move away from risky assets. I tend to think that's what will happen with crypto and Bitcoin specifically, but I don't have a crystal ball. That's just what the numbers are telling me. So I'm interested to hear your take on this because I know there's, diverging paths on people's thoughts on this.
All right. My view on Bitcoin is very, very simplistically put. And I look at it from the perspective of how PayPal, Square, all of those guys took off. When they finally got introduced to the market, being apps, whatever that you can use regularly, when the people had access to it and it was easy for it to use, that's when everything started to take off. Okay. PayPal really didn't make any moves, I believe, until you were able to use it like in Home Depot and stuff. When it was in the public, it got used. That's the problem that I see with Bitcoin is that it's not easy for somebody to get to. Yep. It's very complicated, in my opinion. Every time when I try to talk to somebody about it, I was like, okay, how do I do it? Okay, you need a Bit wallet or something like that, and you need this, and then you need to hook your account to this, and then in order to convert it takes this much time. And I was like, all right, you lost me. Right after that, and then I was told that the wallet can get hacked. I was like, you've really lost me after that. I'm not doing that. So I believe until we have easy access, that it will become simpler for people, and then they will actually be able to take advantage of it. Second point, I always said from the very beginning that this is all going to be cool, right? Then there's going to be a whole bunch of players that come out with their coin, token, whatever it was. And I said, all that's going to get shut down as soon as the government makes their coin. And once they make their coin, they're going to shut everybody else's down. That's what I said from the very beginning. And here we are now with FedNow, all this stuff. And everyone's talking these gloom and doom theories about FedNow and how they're going to be able to monitor your transaction, whatever. Oh, that's another one too.
Yep. I've gone down that rabbit hole too.
Yeah, that's my take on it. Until it actually becomes available for the public to use regularly. If I cannot go to the grocery store and use Bitcoin, I don't think it's going to be able to take off the way that we think. But that's my view.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that mass adoption of it isn't there until there's a use case for it. And right now, there's not really many tangible use cases for it. So I tend to totally agree with you on that. And I will say this, like, and I'm not a crypto expert, so don't take me for a crypto expert. But Bitcoin, and maybe there's a couple other that have more use cases, but I do think if there's one of these that are going to survive, it's Bitcoin over the rest of them. I mean, I would feel more comfortable putting my money in Bitcoin right now than I would in the seventh one down the list. At one point, there was over 100 coins that had over $100 million of market cap. And I'm like,
it's like
100
why?
coins with $100 million of market cap? I can't even name, I can name like 5, 7, 10, maybe 100 of them are worth more than $100 million. That was crazy to me. It reminded me a lot of back in the day, the Tulip Mania. So are you familiar with Tulip Mania, Dutch, Holland? So like
I just learned that, what country is it that has the most tulips? I forget. I just learned this the other day, so it's way out of my mind now.
So here's the crazy story though. So back in like, I think it was the 1700s, in Holland, there became this tulip mania where there was apparently a reported scarcity of tulips. And so people were paying exorbitant prices for tulips, and the rarer they were, the more they were being paid. And at one point, like some of the rarer tulip bulbs were going for more expensive prices than mansions were in the country for one tulip bulb to plant a flower, right? And so it just gets to that psyche of that FOMO that people can experience. Hey, these things are going away. You need to get it now or you're never going to be able to get it again. And then inevitably, because it's a tulip bulb, what wound up happening is the bottom fell out from under it. It went right back down to the prior prices. So, but yeah, I mean, regularly, normal tulips, not even the rare ones, were going for the comparable price of a Tesla back in the day. That's how crazy the prices were. Yeah.
That is insane to think, but I guess that inflation happens everywhere. You can't get rid of it. I used to love bacon, and I remember back in 2008 when bacon prices went to the roof. I was like, I'm not buying this. It was like $6 or $7 at one point when it was for like £1.50, when it used to be like $2.50. I'm like, nah, you know what? I like you, but not that much.
Oh, I hear you there, man.
So let me get to what I want to get to for last. My favorite thing here. Hip hop. All right.
Here we go.
So yes, my background, the reason why I do what I do is because I used to I still listen to hip hop, but when I did in the 90s, all the education I got as far as finances were concerned were no good. Now I have developed the ear to translate it now into something. Sure. And I think that's what I do now with the whole stocks and bars, stocks and hip hop. I'm able to take those lyrics, decipher them, and then now tell you this is what it means in the investing world on what it is. Because the hip hop artists always had some form of money. Now I kind of understand they didn't, but in the videos, they showed us all this wealth, and that's what we chased. So I want to actually ask you, what's the hip hop, or what is your favorite hip hop artist?
So I'm a Jay-Z and Tupac guy.
Okay.
And I don't know that I'm willing to point to one over the other there. I'm an East Coast guy, so everyone was Biggie versus Tupac. I like Tupac more, but no, I grew up kind of on the later kind of like 90s, early 2000 albums of Jay-Z more than anything else. And then Tupac, I just grew to like respect. Tupac was like trying to change the culture, trying to say, hey, fathers need to be involved in their kids' lives, so on and so forth, when that was absolutely not the culture at the time. So those are my two favorite, probably forever.
My favorite is Nas. And yeah, I've always liked Nas.
Oh, they have that Jay-Z beef going forever.
Yeah, we did have that, and I was riding with Nas all the way. But yeah, when the hip hop that I listened to back then, when I started this podcast, as a matter of fact, the whole reason why it started is because I was listening to that music. And I remember when I was listening to it, and it was telling me on how I was going to take my girl, and how I was broke, and how my car didn't look like theirs. And it just made me, I was like, why am I listening to this? And at that point I said, all right, I gave up hip hop literally for like about a year and a half, where I didn't listen to anything. The radio, I did listen to the older hip hop, but the radio at the time, I said, cut it off. I'm not doing it. And then it dawned upon me. I said, if that hip hop doesn't exist, I can create it. And that's why I do what I do now. And I love it.
I love that.
I used to think I was this outlier, right? But as I continue to do this, I find that there are more people who's like, yeah, this is awesome. And I'm like, Thank you. There are more people like me who actually love hip hop and want to learn how to invest. That's
Yep.
why I exist.
Oh, such a nice intersection of the two. One of the guys that's on our team is a guy named Brandon Copeland. Are you familiar with
Okay,
Brandon?
I am football player.
Yeah, football player. So he just got done with his 10th year in the NFL last year, and he's a hip hop guy and bridges the gap between the two. He teaches a financial literacy class at UPenn, where he went, Wharton School
Okay,
of Business, Ivy League. So he was doing that. He was the only person to ever do the NFL and be a Wharton or just be a professor in general in the off season. And his whole thing is like he would intertwine hip hop in lessons and financial
excellent.
awareness, etc. So he's doing the same thing you're doing, and he's amazing.
That's awesome.
As are you. As are you.
Thank you. I got to connect with him at some point in time because he's on my timeline frequently because we obviously mesh. So it would be awesome to be able to connect with him at some point in time.
He does, yeah, and he does a podcast with a guy named Ross Mack, who is involved in the music industry as well. So there's definitely a heavy music tie on that end.
Gotta love it.
Yep.
Last one. All right, we're going to talk about playoffs and NBA. So check this out. When I went to your page, I saw one off-page posts, and my guy can hoop. All right, so I saw that he got air up there, right? So tell me, man, how long have you been a hooper?
Oh, basketball. So I played football in college.
Okay.
That said, basketball was always my passion, right? So growing up, my father was a basketball coach. My sister went to college, played basketball, then became a basketball coach. Her husband, my brother-in-law, was a basketball coach. So I just got it in my blood, right? So growing up, that was me, man. But the one thing I never developed is my fine-tuned skills shooting. I just don't have a jumper. And it's something I worked a lot on. I played AAU throughout high school and worked hard on it. I was great at everything else, but I could not shoot the ball. And you can't make it to the next level unless you can shoot, man. So I'm that guy that's in warm-ups, and everyone's like, oh, he's coming. I got him. And then they're like, dude, you can't shoot. And I'm like, I know. I didn't tell you I could shoot. I told you I could dunk.
I'm the opposite. I can't dunk anymore. We'll put it that way. I haven't been able to get out there and do it, but I can shoot. I can shoot. Yeah, I can shoot. I can definitely listen. Anybody out there who want to put a game on, I can shoot. All right, put me out there. It's lights out. I'm nice.
I love it.
So,
I love it. And how often are you playing these days?
Now I'm actually going to see if I can get into a league this year. And the reason why I was scared is because I kept saying, this is going to be my first game. I'm going to blow my knee out. You know, I'm 42 now. And I keep thinking about what the heck am I going to do out there? If I injure myself, what I'm going to be sitting back here, sitting on this computer with a cast on. But now I'm like, you know what? You only live once, man. And I love hooping. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. If it happens, oh, well, it happened.
You like this, man. So I play in the same league Wednesday nights. It's pickup, but it's generally the same 15-ish guys. And the guy that organizes it is, you know, probably my age. I'm 34. I think he's 35 or 36. His father plays with us. He's 73. So like, you know,
okay, I got no excuse.
Is the best. So like, you know, everyone else is our age, you know, in that ballpark. And then there's this guy out there. It's like, you know, you got to be a little careful. You can't, you know, you can't be running him over and stuff like that. So, but it's fun. It's just inspiring. The other day we're warming up. A man's laying on the ground, the 73-year-old, and I'm like, what is he doing? So he's stretching, and then he goes from, you know, toe touches, rolls back, puts his feet back over his head, and touches the ground with his feet when he's laying on his back. I'm like, you're 73, my man. I'm like, Mr. V, let me get you up because you might be stuck there the rest of your life. Come on, man. Now get back out there. He's 73 and doing it.
Yeah, I'm with it now. That's enough. Enough said. I'm a sign for this league. They don't play until the fall, which is cool.
There you go.
I'm all right with that because I go out and I go get some buckets in around the block from here, and you know, but there's nobody there playing. Nobody in my neighborhood goes out and plays, so I shoot. So that's how I, you know, I still got it.
Still got it. I see that for him.
All right, last question. Who's taking the NBA Finals? Who's got it?
Man, I don't know. I'll tell you who I'm a Dame guy. I'm a Dame guy. So if you see in some
Okay.
of my videos, I wear a Dame Lillard jersey. Obviously, he's out. And I just love Dame because Dame was the original one going back to like, now a lot of people are saying it. But at the time, I hadn't heard anyone else say it. And they're like, Dame, you know, you took that game-winning shot from deep, didn't act like there was any pressure. And he goes, my man, pressure? He's like, pressure is the single mom out there that doesn't know if she's going to have food for a kid in the fridge at the end. And I was like, dude, this guy's the guy. Like, come on, man.
He recognizes real life.
Dame's out, the Knicks are out, and at this point, I'm like, I don't know. I'm having a tough time getting behind anyone. Who you rooting for? I'll jump on the bandwagon because I got no one to root for right now.
You said my team is out. The Knicks. I'm a full-blooded New Yorker, right? I was there, but I'm from Brooklyn. Although I would love to be able to root for the Nets, I can't. I'm a Knicks fan. I am 100%. And I remember when they doubted us when we was the 8th seed in 1999 with Latrell Sprewell, and we went up against the Spurs and we lost 4-1. But we went all the way, the first number 8 seed ever to do it in NBA history, and we did it. And they counted us out, and they're doing it again against the Heat, who also happens to be the 8th seed, but they're going down. All right, Knicks.
Oh, dude, I thought that. You can tell I don't pay that much attention to the NBA. I'm a college basketball guy. I thought the Knicks were out. They're not out.
No, they down 2-1 right now.
Oh, heck yeah.
2-1.
Then I'm on board with the Knicks. I'm not, not an NBA fan, but here we go. Let's do it, man. I'm a Knicks fan. I'm a Dame fan. So again, I don't really watch the NBA, but I'm a college basketball guy. So Syracuse is my team there.
I like Syracuse. I always like Syracuse. Yeah. I haven't seen much of them since Melo left, but I like Syracuse.
That's because no one's seen that much of them since Melo left. That's not true. They had a couple good years since then, but like my man Jim Boeheim, who just is stepping out now, he's like 78 years old or whatever. He built the program up there in the Big East with John Thompson, Jim Calhoun, that whole contingent. He's now done, and I think that it was time, and we might get a revitalization of the program there.
Hopefully they get something good on there. Yeah, last people who are left in the NBA, we got the Knicks, Heat, then we got Lakers, Golden State, we got the Suns and Denver Nuggets, and then on the East Coast we have Philly and Boston. So that's our last teams that we got here. I could care less for any of the other ones. I'm kind of I can't say I'm a Lakers fan. I like the Lakers, but I'm not a Lakers fan. I can't claim that ring. That's not me. Knicks.
Let's go. Are you a Giants fan too? Are you an NFL fan?
Giants fan all the way. Yes.
My man.
See, we didn't get a chance to talk about this at FinCon. Yo, Taylor, I appreciate you, brother, man. And one thing I do on this show is, because I know life is so short, I tell people I love them. I've lost people in my life, and I've seen other people just wish they had that opportunity to say something to people. And I don't let that go by. So I don't have to know people to love them. I can tell anybody that. So much love to you, brother, to your family, to your brother who's having a baby right now. Yo, much love to the Sohn family. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you do for people to learn about the market, because this is something that I feel like personally everybody should be involved in. And man, big shout out to you for creating a product that's going to allow people to participate in the market with less risk as well. And it's going to the people who truly need that help. So kudos to you for figuring that out and being able to offer it to people. Much love to you, man. I really appreciate you.
Oh, super kind. Love right back at you, brother. Seriously, you do a great job. You humbled me by giving me such a nice introduction here, but super fun chatting with you. I'm happy to come on and do this anytime if you ever want to do it again.
Thank you. And that is it for Stocks and Bars, family. I appreciate you. And now you know what time it is. It's time for the bars. Yo, Pac, I'm gonna hold this beat for a minute, fam. We got you on the other side. Stocks and Bars. How do we begin in the stock market? Start? That idea isn't different. It's a thought process. Think about it. Most of y'all been scared. That's a thought process. No longer. Want change but won't do it? Let's halt that process.
bought a little liquor for it. What you knew about the market, we gon' turn it into foreign. Finances, Mr. Hip Hop, I'm making it important. We could talk about the best, is it Brian or is it Jordan? When we talk about this market, then the culture get distorted. Why is ownership a must? You can look at Flint, you saw it, it's appalling. But then there's people like me and Taylor serving our calling, helping you progress to be your best, and we're all in. Doing this before trends, we remember what poor is, from where the floor lives. Investing our dollars, making sure that they all twins. Our success loves company, and we can all win. Stocks and bars.
Investments in stock. I invest in stock. Invest that money smart, make it last. Investments in stock. I invest in stock. Invest that money smart, make it last. Investments in stock. I invest in stock. Invest that money smart, make it last. Investments in stock. I invest in stock. Invest that money smart, make it last. Investments in stock. Bars and stock. Bars and stock. Bars and